What's going on, Browns fans? NFL free agency gets started in a week and a half next Wednesday, but next Monday, March 14th, is when teams can start flirting with free agents and gauge some interest, kind of like unofficial tampering opening up. So if you want the Browns to go out and make a splash signing for one of those top-notch wide receivers that we'll take a look at in today's video, then go ahead and hit that thumbs up icon. Like I just mentioned, today's show is all about free agent targets for the Browns because after the Amari Cooper news of a release coming his direction, we kind of kicked into a higher gear just across the NFL rumors and news world about free agents and where they could end up and who teams are looking at closest. So over at The Athletic, Jeff Howe and Zac Jackson put out a very interesting piece about who the Browns are going to be looking at specifically in free agency to up their wide receiver. They said the Browns plan to overhaul their group of wide receivers in free agency and the draft. They've known for days that Cowboys wideout Amari Cooper would be available through a trade or release and have interest in a talented group of free agents that includes Chris Godwin, Mike Williams, and Allen Robinson. So let's check out those four names that he's alluding to right there. I've got them ranked in my preference order of what I would like to see the Browns do in free agency in terms of who I would like to see them sign the most. Chris Godwin, I've talked about him for quite some time now on the show. He is my favorite. Davante Adams is the best wide receiver in this free agency class, but let's face facts. He's not coming to Cleveland. He's not attainable. So we'll just kind of breeze by him. Godwin's my favorite. Cooper's second. Allen Robinson had a down year in 2021, but he is still a very productive wide receiver. And finally, Mike Williams is at the bottom of the barrel. But you know what? If I end up with Mike Williams, that's not a bad consolation prize right there. You've seen my top four guys, but who do you think the Browns should sign? I'll let you guys play GM for me. Put on Andrew Berry's hat, put his pants on, walk a mile in his shoes, and let me know who you would like the Browns to sign in free agency. Let's look at these four names a little closer and compare their stats. So I'm looking at their last four seasons to get a better, fuller picture of what they have done for the last couple of years of their career. Now, Chris Godwin and Amari Cooper have had the best careers so far. I mean, the best stats over those last 4 years. Neck and neck right there, 28 touchdowns. What is that, 50 yards separating them and just 6 receptions. So their stats are nearly identical. Allen Robinson, he's a little further back, but he's also had much worse quarterback play. He hasn't had Tom Brady or Dak Prescott throwing the ball to him. He's had Andy Dalton and Mitch Trubisky and even, I think, Mike Glennon for a period of time. And, actually, no Mike Glennon back. But anyway, Mike Williams, meanwhile, former first-round pick that didn't get off to a good start his career, but he's actually not as old as I thought. Like, if you ask me how old is Mike Williams, I think he'd be 28, 29. He was only drafted back in 2017. So he's still working on that rookie deal. But I think that the options for Mike Williams are limited because it looks like the Chargers are very interested in bringing him back. Also, the Bucs are interested in bringing Chris Godwin back, and that's why Godwin and Williams have kind of been dubbed as prime franchise tag targets for their respective teams. Now, the deadline to get this done for that is March 8th. Today's March 6th as we film this. So if they're going to franchise tag them, they've got to do it soon. And if they don't tag them, and if they let them hit the open market, it's pretty much free game for someone to try and come in and let money talk and try to lure them away from what they've been known to, because Williams and Godwin have only played in Tampa Bay and in LA/San Diego for their entire career. So it's up to Cleveland to, back the truck up a little bit and put some money at their feet and get them to the lake. Before we look at the rest of today's video, I want to tell you about this awesome website and video platform called Rumble, which we are also on. And if you want to get started there, it's a very interesting, very unique website that has no censorship pretty much. So you can say whatever the hell you want. You can swear. You can do whatever you want. Sometimes YouTube, not so much. So follow us over there at rumble.com/Browns Report. We are one of the top 5 channels by Chat Sports on Rumble. I want to be the number 1 channel. The only other NFL channel that has more subscribers is the Chiefs Report. So if you want to be still salty about that Week 1 loss to the Chiefs, follow us there. Let's pass them. Let's be the number 1 channel on Rumble at rumble.com/Browns Report. The Browns have a good amount of cap space coming up in free agency, but they could clear a lot more if they were to move on from Jarvis Landry, which would be tough emotionally, but financially it may make a bit of sense. And if you look at the numbers here, he's going to make a big $16.3 million in terms of the cap hit for 2022. If they were to cut or trade him, they're saving nearly $15 million, and they only have to eat 1.5 of dead cap. And so Andrew Berry's looking at that, and he goes, could I take that $15 million and put it to better use? Put it to a younger wide receiver, or a wide receiver I think has more days left in his career than Jarvis Landry. That's the big question for Andrew Berry, is whether he thinks Landry has enough left in his career to make it make sense to have him play in the last year of his deal. If you're going to have him play his last year of his deal at $15 million, are you even looking at maybe extending that deal? Try and lessen that cap hit and spread it out over an extra year or two. So with that all in mind, would you cut Jarvis Landry to sign a big-name wide receiver? Give me a Y for yes or an N for no down in the comment section. It's tough, I think, to wrap your mind around moving on from Juice for everything he has done for this team and this organization and, frankly, the city. But this is the NFL. This is a business. And unfortunately, you got to make business decisions. And I think Berry is going to make a tough decision, but I think it will result in Landry not returning to Cleveland. Maybe that paves the way for someone like Amari Cooper, who last year, sure, under 1,000 yards, but 8 touchdowns in a crowded wide receiver room with CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. And when your wide receiver 4 is Cedric Wilson, who a lot of teams are looking at this free agency period, that's a pretty loaded room right there for the Dallas Cowboys. And then you look at Chris Godwin, for example, and what he did in Tampa Bay. Now, he's coming off an ACL tear. That's got to be noted. But so was Allen Robinson, for example, when he signed with the Bears, and that was not much of an issue. It's 2022. Doctors are pretty good at surgeries these days. This is not the Civil War. We're not amputating legs. And players are very good at rehabbing and coming off those injuries. So I like the idea of Chris Godwin a lot. Over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns to go with it. And he was kind of handcuffed with Mike Evans. Now, maybe handcuff's not the right word. Maybe Mike Evans actually allowed Chris Godwin to have such great stats because he drew so much attention to him. But I still think Chris Godwin is a wide receiver 1 in this NFL, and he should be paid like that. And if the Bucs don't want to give him that kind of money, because let's say they go out and get Deshaun Watson, and they want to pay him a lot of money, I'd be fine with Cleveland taking out the checkbook and just writing his name, handing it over, blank check style. All right, before we get to the rest of today's show, if you guys want free Browns coverage throughout all of NFL free agency, then go ahead and subscribe because like I mentioned at the top of the show, NFL free agency unofficially begins March 14th, next Monday, 8 days away from when I'm filming this right now, and you're going to want to get every single bit of content you can get on who the Browns sign in free agency. So go ahead, hit that big red button, and subscribe. So I was on Twitter last night, just before going to bed. 92.3 The Fans, Garrett Bush, had an interesting idea that I want to talk about for a moment. He tweeted out, if you want to make Baker successful next year, here's the easiest path trade. Here's the easiest path. Trade a 6th-rounder for Cole Beasley, sign Amari Cooper. Sign or trade for Andy Isabella in Arizona Cardinals. Re-sign Njoku. Draft the best wide receiver at number 13. Play 2022 season out and see what happens. So there's 2 ideas that we haven't really heard much of over the offseason. Trading for Cole Beasley, who, by the way, just 2 days ago got permission from the Buffalo Bills to seek a trade. Or Andy Isabella, the former 2nd-round draft pick from 2-3 seasons ago that has just flopped in the Cardinals organization and has been stuck behind much other better producing players that were not drafted in the 2nd round. So if we look at the wide receiver depth chart here, this is what it could look like, for example, if they were to do everything that Garrett talked about. Getting Amari Cooper in free agency, making him your top wide receiver. Drafting, I said Garrett Wilson, but you could put someone else in there, right? If you like Chris Olave after that blazing 40 speed at the Combine more, or Treylon Burks, or Jahan Dotson, even though I think that's way too early for him. Whatever your favorite wide receiver is, put him at wide receiver 2. Cole Beasley in the slot, DPJ at wide receiver 4, Anthony Schwartz at 5, and Andy Isabella at 6. That's a pretty loaded wide receiver room right there, if you ask me. Cooper, 13th overall pick, Cole Beasley in your slot, and DPJ at wide receiver 4. He'd be the best wide receiver 4 in the NFL, in my opinion. With that all in mind, grade that wide receiver room for me. Get a letter grade A, B, C, D, or F. I'm probably going to give that like a B plus. A minus, B plus. Actually, it's probably even too harsh, but let's go with A minus. But looking at Cole Beasley, what he did in 2021 for the Buffalo Bills, 82 receptions for 693 yards. We know that he is a favorite go-to target for quarterbacks. He's an easy, works in the slot, runs 5 yards, cuts inside, put it on his hands, he'll catch it and get the first down. Just one touchdown. He's been playing in the NFL for a decade now, so he's definitely running towards the end of his career, but still, I think he's got plenty left in the tank. And as for Andy Isabella, former second-round pick for the Cardinals, that just never worked out in AZ, maybe he needs a change of scenery. I'm not really in love with Andy Isabella. If you want to toss him in, if the Browns want to trade, they don't have a 7th-rounder, but if they were to have a 7th-rounder and trade him for Andy Isabella, fine. Probably going to be a little more productive than whoever you're going to get in the 7th round, but I'm not going to lose much sleep or even give much more breath to the idea of trading for Isabella. All right, before we sign off on today's show, if you guys want to stay up to date on the latest Browns free agency news throughout the entire free agency period, which is, like I said, just 8 days away, follow me on Twitter at MatthewPD. I'll follow you back so we can talk about the Browns together. Follow me there, and I'll catch you guys later here on the Cleveland Browns Report.